And welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
You know the guys from Fight Night Picks for their weekly UFC previews and predictions, live shows like Question Mark Kicks and the Sidekick. Thanks to your support, they're adding a new show to the channel. If you're an MMA fan, you're going to want to join in the action of Dana White's Contender series. So as they always say, let's get into it.
Oh boy. Just like that, we're back. We're set for the last week of Dana White's Contender Series, Week 10, Bo Nickal versus Donovan Beard, as you can see in the graphic between us. As always, one half of those, Craig Allen FNP on the socials, Matt Allen next to me, Matt Allen FNP on the socials. Matt, oddly enough, you look better than I do this week. The lighting is very poor on the road. For some reason, my camera doesn't want to pick my face up, so it's just going to be like a great audio experience on my end with the mic in front of me. But listen, I couldn't.
You look like you're being held hostage right now. I'm not going to lie.
It doesn't look all that great, but what I do know is we're set for a big time week with Dana White's Contender Series. If this is the first time that you've joined this show, we want to thank you because, listen, we made the show exactly for you. We had a subscriber goal last year. If we hit 30,000, we would do the Dana White's Contender Series previews. You folks delivered on that one, and we've had a lot of fun breaking these shows down. Matt, above water, above the 500 mark, looking to carry that on over, having a big-time week in the last week. And if you look at last week, Matt, week number 9, all 5 of the winners got contracts. Jafel Filio, Nurullo Aliev, of course you had Austin Lane, and in the main event, Bruno Fajea. But Matt, no fighter bigger than Raul Rosas Jr. Got a huge win by decision. And Matt, I mean, the sky's the limit for that guy. But what have you made over the entire season of Dana White's Contender Series? Are there some big prospects that have really popped off? I know there's one in particular from week 1, but yeah, I know we have had a lot of
too obvious of a pick, and I'm just going to use it. Be Joe Pyfer, because Joe Pyfer's by far the best story out of this season. If we get another like Sean O'Malley level of Dana White Contender Series, just success stories, I'm not predicting a title or anything like that, just because in the sport of MMA, it's so hard to predict where these people's ceilings are going to be. But just from like common fanfare, how could you not pick Joe Pyfer? He's got the personality, he's got the story, he has the exciting background. They gave him an absolute layup of a UFC debut too, and that's always a great sign for how the UFC is really going to push this type of an athlete, this fighter. They're not going to give you the hardest matchups right away. They're going to slowly build you up in a division that desperately does need contenders. So I think Joe Pyfer, by far, and it's not even close, has made the most of his opportunity on this season.
Tabufo out there in the comment section saying that the camera's a lot better now that I have the mic out of focus. It's a little bit better, but the trouble is the lighting's you don't get to pick the lighting when you're staying in a hotel. That's all I'll say. But Matt, when we do focus in on this one, I mean, Craig Higgins is hitting us up on Facebook because we're live on Twitter at Fight Night Picks. We're live on Facebook at Fight Night Picks, as well as the YouTubes for this one. Final show, you got to do it big. And he's saying taking Freddy Linares as the underdog to get the win this week. So he's got a big time fight coming up. We will preview all of the fights that we have coming up this week. And Matt, they start with, oh boy, Ashiek Ajim, 6-1, representing, what is it, Long Island MMA. He's taking on Mateus Mendonca. And Matt, when I look at Mateus out of Brazil, I was doing my tape study. I usually do a quick Google search. I try and watch some promo videos. I go on the fighter's Instagram, see who they're training with, so on and so forth. There was a 2020 MMA fighting article that was written by Guilherme Cruz, who does a great job with a lot of those Brazilian fighters. And the headline was, Mateus Mendonca once invaded a gym threatening to stab someone, Now he's one of Brazil's top prospects. And it was a story of a scalpel and a bully and how a man found mixed martial arts. And what an impressive fighter he is. I mean, the only trouble I have, like, he hasn't fought for a while. That's kind of the one thing that I do have, but he's only 23 years old. He beat at the time over with Future. It was the current or the then current Titan FC champ, Rudson Kaliokane. And he also beat UFC vet Pedro Nobre, who was a one-hitter quitter, illegal strike, you're out of the UFC. So it has been an interesting run for him. He has a great mix of striking and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's a really, really interesting prospect to watch. And he fought 7 times in 3 months back in 2019, fought 8 times that year, fought twice in 2020. And that was the last time that we saw him. What did you make of Brazil's Mateus Mendonca?
And I would like to speak about the scheduling, too, of his overall record, because that is really interesting to see just how fast he got his career started, and then just how he is going to look after such a long time off, because it has been nearly 2 years since the last time that he has actively competed, but you really did sum up his game perfectly. He is well-rounded, but he is good at everything. He's not one of these well-rounded fighters where it's like, okay, you have to make the fight really well-rounded, and you have to mix your martial arts to have success. I really do like his grappling, and I like his IQ to be able to switch up the positions, going from striking, going from grappling. The thing is, he is fighting an absolute buzzsaw on Tuesday. I want to say the weekend every time we do these shows, but it is on Tuesday, because with Ashiek Ajim, he throws everything with 100% just nasty intentions behind it too. He's someone who's going to march forward, go for the knockout, throws recklessly, but that's the problem. We talked about guys like Justin Gaethje when they came into the UFC. They had that recklessness in them, but they also had the Goldilocks zone where they could kind of figure out how to gauge themselves to make that type of a style have more longevity to it. And that's what I worry about a little bit about Ashiek in this matchup. Could he go out there and get a knockout immediately and look amazing and have one of those Chaos Williams type debuts that we all really remember, and it's going to really get him off to a good start in the UFC? The problem is, since he's fighting someone who is so well-rounded, and since I haven't really seen the cardio issues out of Mendonca that I have seen out of Ajim, I do worry a little bit about how he's going to look after that first big storm, because he really does fight like a smaller Rumble Johnson. I cannot stress this enough.
Like, I had it in my notes. I wrote down Ajim, the one-hitter quitter. I mean, 6-1 as an amateur, 6-1 as a pro, 8-1 as an amateur. You look at that loss to Chris Mutino, it really was the cardio that did overall. It cost him, and 5 of his 6 wins are by finish. He's an impressive fighter. As far as the ceiling in the UFC, like you said, like, he fights like Justin Gaethje, but it's not a Justin Gaethje ceiling, is it?
Not at all. That's the thing, though. Like, Gaethje was a champion from WSOF before he came over. He had a lot more time to marinate before we finally got the finished product. That's kind of the problem right now. It does feel like Ajim is a little bit before his time, if that makes any sense. And maybe he will be able to get the win, have a really successful career. It's just with a game like that, and I hate to say this because it's going to sound really negative, but hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. It feels like a high-level regional skill set. Like, you could beat a lot of guys just going in there, having a lot of power, and utilizing your power and relying on that one X factor. I think when you do get even to the Contender Series level, and of course at the UFC level, you just need a few more wrinkles in your game to really have success.
Well, and we'll see how Don Shainis makes out with a game plan like that coming up this week in the UFC. But I think it's going to be a fun fight. And just a passing note as far as the odds are concerned in this fight, Mendonca open -220. He's a -298 right now. Ajim open +185. He's a +231. So you're going with your CS bantamweight champ is Ashiek Ajim. Out of Long Island MMA, we had a big-time Long Island fighter on week 1. You talked about Joe Pyfer, but I mean, you had Dennis Bazookia there. Wasn't able to get it done. You got a guy looking to pick it up. You had something to add to this one.
Just really good gyms being showcased on Contender Series in this fight. That's all.
100%. Well, listen, we want to hear from you over in the comment section. Brandor is saying, let's go. Prison Mike hasn't been around since the Manscaped time, so he's saying, tell him about Manscaped, boys. Well, Prison Mike, find us some new sponsors. Zach Chi saying, last week, boys, let's get that cash. Thanks for adding this series. Always nice getting different perspectives. And Ben saying, I kind of like the plus money on Ajim. I would assume a 23-year-old's gotten better in the gym in Mendonca. It's just we haven't seen him in such a long time, but he does have a good strength of schedule. He does have a decent level of opponent coming from Brazil. You never know sometimes what you're going to get with some of these fighting organizations, as we'll get to in the co-main event. But this is one of those fights that I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be, shot out of a cannon. Great way to start the night. But you move into the second fight, Matt, and we have a guy whose name is kind of all over the place. Different sites have it as different things. But Rafael Estevam, Hamos Push is in there as well. He's taking on Joao, Elias. And if you look at it for Joao, I mean, this is a guy. If you look on Tapology, we said this in the UFC previews to get ready for this week. Like, look at this person's Tapology ranking because they're nowhere near the UFC's rankings. He's the number 1 ranked Brazilian flyweight out of 658 other flyweights. Now, Estevam is somewhat lower. I think he's in the 30 tier. So listen, you're number 1 out of 658 guys. You're probably doing something right. Now, the only knock I have on Elias is that the guy's got a ton of experience for being a regional fighter. Like, you can see it on the screen right there. 17-3-1 with a no contest. Coming out of Gile Ribeiro team, which you're going to recognize. Karine Silva's out of that gym. You also have Rogerio Bontarin and Augusto Sakai. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, as now the camera really decides to do its own thing. But this is one of those fights. Like, Elias, I like him. He's got a blood and guts style. He's kind of all over the cage. He can really find success. 12 of his 17 wins are by finish. He is a submission specialist with 11 submissions, but he's a very well-seasoned fighter. And I think for Estevam, who I'll kind of let you take over, he's a Nova União guy. Like, he is very special too. I think these two guys complement each other really well, and I think it'll be a fun fight.
This should be a really fun fight. It's one that I could honestly see either guy being able to take, and I really could see the winner having success at the UFC level too, because are we going with Ramos or Estevam?
Let's go Estevam.
Estevam, perfect. So for Estevam, that's the thing. His jiu-jitsu is phenomenal, and he has really good MMA jiu-jitsu too. He's someone who can do a lot of really deep sweeps from positions that look really poor, honestly, when he begins them. But both guys are pretty well-rounded, and that's the thing that I really wanted to say too. Like, yes, they both have that submission background, but it's not like either guy's just some like that's a weird compare. Just some like lost dog on the feet. Like, they can get it done with the striking. Now, at the UFC level, again, it's very different. Like, maybe those holes in the striking are going to show themselves a lot more, but these are two grapplers who can strike their way into some of those grappling engagements, and that's what you really like out of fighters at this level, because that's something that we get on fighters who are like borderline in the top 15 for, and it's really nice to see fighters who are competing at this level already having some of those tools. And this is more just a point on like Contender Series in total. It's been a while the Contender Series has been on now. It started in 2017, 2018? Like, thank you. It's been a while now. Isn't it cool how we're kind of seeing the progression of these lower level guys in MMA just as they're coming up? Like, fighters at this level are getting better over time. It's almost like guys in the NBA. Like, yes, there's always been star players in the NBA, but just the bench players now are way better because bench players in the 90s had like other jobs. That's what I like to see out of Contender Series. It does feel like there's just more talent around. And even though we do get on the UFC sometimes for signing guys who don't deserve to be signed, I still think that a lot of these regional guys are further ahead than honestly what I assume.
I got to kind of zig and zag a little bit because to me, they already zapped a lot of the American talent. That's what Dana White's Contender Series is, a feeding frenzy with sharks, but just for, the regional talent. Now you're starting. The
average fighter on Contender Series is better now than they were 5 years ago, though. That's my only point. Wow,
you're really starting to zap a lot of Brazilian talent. The second half of this season in particular, but this fight, it should be a great one. Estevam, like you said, he's really good at jiu-jitsu. And his opponent's really good at jiu-jitsu. Will we get a fight on the feet? Is that what it'll entail? You look at the odds in this matchup. Esteves, he opened -190. He's still about there. You can get him around -200. Elias, pretty much where he opened as well. So it's Estevam all over the internet. And then best fight odds have him as Esteves. So it's just like,
and Ramos too. They have both of them on best fight odds.
Emilio. Well, the UFC have them as Estevam. So it should be a fun fight. Like I said, while it lasts, the second fight that's on this card. Again, let us know who you have. Jack W talking about Linares. Ooh, what a silly comment that was. So Freddy Emiliano Linares is your next fight. Now, he's 8-1. He's going to be taking on Jack Jenkins. And for Jack Jenkins, Matt, we have to throw a shout out there. And I know I don't look to be in my best light, but I will say this. To Cam O'Neill, your promotion's very good. And for Jack Jenkins, he comes out of Eternal MMA. He's a champ over there. He was also a champ with Rogue MMA Championships in their first card. Matt, you and I have been to cards that have been upstarts, and they had their first show, and there's champions there. Maybe that was the deal right there, but he was able to get it done in that promotion. And we know the quality of fighter that's come out of Eternal. Obviously, Jack Della Maddalena is kind of their poster child right now, but Jenkins is a really well-rounded fighter. And I guess I will kind of not necessarily sing your praises, but agree with your train of thought from the last fight. When you look at this fighter in Jack Jenkins, or at least when I look like him, he looks a bit like MMA's Jack Eichel. He's got the salad shaved on the sides and it's curly, but he also has a mustache. Like he's got the look, but he also fights like a very well-seasoned fighter for being 9-2 and only pretty well competing in and around Australia. And I really do like that. I think one thing, like 7 of his 9 wins are by finish. He's got 3 by submission, 4 by knockout. In watching the tape, he's a very cerebral fighter. His fight IQ is very high. His defensive wrestling, offensive wrestling is good. His output's fairly low. And when I watch Freddy Emiliano Linares, that guy throws everything all the time. And it hasn't been against a good level competition. I don't know what his gas tank's going to look like, but I think this is a good matchup to test both guys.
It should be, because you're right. Linares is all gas and no brakes pretty much from the go, but doesn't seem to have some of the cardio issues that we have noticed out of some of those fighters. Like, this guy can brawl for a little while, which is unique. Most of the time when we talk about brawlers, they can do it for 5 minutes, then they get tired, they become a much more basic fighter. But for Linares, I like the kicks that he's able to throw too. He does throw pretty good combinations. He can throw the punches, then follow it up with the kicks, which is really nice to see. But you're right, Jack Jenkins does have sort of something unique about him. I'll give him that, because he doesn't seem to be the Bo Nickal level prospect, of course, because few fighters on Contender Series are ever going to get the odds that a Bo Nickal will ever really have the background that a type of fighter like Bo Nickal does. Like, we talk about fighters who have 5 or 6 world kickboxing championships or just regional kickboxing championships, for being honest, but like, Bo Nickal's truly one of the greatest wrestlers in the world, and that's probably one of the most translatable skills to MMA. So for Jack Jenkins, I really like his well-rounded ability, and this is what I like too out of the footage I saw. He doesn't seem to struggle with any one archetype of fighter, which is really nice to see on the regional scene. If he does get a pure wrestler, I think he's good enough on the feet and good enough defensively with his takedown defense to have success in the striking. If he's fighting a pure striker, I think he can do the opposite, flip it around on them. I just think those are nice things to see when we're talking about fighters that haven't even made their UFC debut yet.
And it's past the Hansel, he's so hot right now stage, but leg kicks. I mean, you've seen Jack Jenkins finish fights with leg kicks, but it is a giant part of his arsenal. So a very impressive fighter. And for Linares, this is a guy, I mean, he's the Budo Cento featherweight champ, 7 of his 8 wins by finish, 7 by knockout, trains at a Bone Breakers gym in Mexico. You might have heard us talk about Bone Breakers recently because Melissa Martinez is out of that gym, and her brother, who's the Combate Bantamweight champ, David Martinez, is also at a Bone Breaker. So an interesting fight right there. We have a quick look at the odds for this one, and Jenkins is a pretty big favorite, open -160, and he is Hotel Wi-Fi -268. We look at Linares, open +140, +214. So Jenkins is a pretty sizable favorite in this matchup. But Matt, I know if we move into the co-main event, this is a fight that I've been expecting for a long, long time. And we kind of talked about Sam Patterson. You might remember it at the end of last year. And I threw a line out there because John Gooden put a tweet out and he said, I'm working on a project about Sam Patterson. I thought, what? John Gooden's working on something on his own and it's not UFC related? What is this? So I threw him a line and he said, yeah, it's coming out in December. Check it out. He did like a behind the scenes in camp with Sam Patterson. Holy smokes. You talk about a guy that's dedicated to like cardio. It's like Brandon Davis before they sent him outside of the UFC, but that's what Sam Patterson does all the damn time.
And you normally don't look at tall, thin fighters in the lower weight classes and think, wow, cutting all that weight's really going to help their cardio. But you're right. Sam Patterson never stops going. And that's a really nice thing to see from a guy who has to use his range as effectively as he does. Because that's the thing that you didn't even touch on. This guy's 6'4".
No, stop it. Okay, that's the one thing that you have to stop on, because everybody won't shut up about the fact that
he's very big.
This guy's 6'3", listed by the UFC, and has a 78-inch reach. His opponent is 6'1" with a 74-inch reach. And if you look at them sized up next to each other, it's not as big of a difference as a lot of the people that Patterson's fought. And everybody's going to tell you how big Patterson is. Cenci is also quite big.
Haven't let me finish my point, though. The difference between Patterson and Cenci is Cenci doesn't always fight like he's 6'1" at lightweight. And you're right. Both these guys are very big for the division. And it's interesting because Cenci at range is oddly going to probably have more success just because of the leg kicks and just because of his variety of offense from the outside, especially in this matchup. But the thing that I do like about Patterson is he doesn't really get dissuaded by anything. But he's going to stick to the game plan. He's going to be steady. And I think that's going to be really important in this matchup. If Cenci does get off to a really good start, he's going to have to maintain that for a while in this fight. Now, I think he could, honestly, because this should be an interesting fight. But the thing about Vinicius is, like a lot of his opponents don't have the necessary, they don't really get you all that inspired to see him fight somebody who we both talked about. Just let me finish this. About Sam Patterson, we don't often talk about fighters before they get on Contender Series. Sam Patterson's someone who we both known about for a little while now, so it is quite surprising to see a guy who has a lot of wins over 0-0 fighters getting an opportunity like this.
And I didn't mean to cut you off. Ethan Campbell, though, hitting us up in the chat. And I got to make sure that I get to his comment, Matt, before we go too far. Saying, using my data for the boys, Fiona took out my power. Ethan, hopefully things are going well. I know Prince Edward Island was in rough shape, and especially Charlottetown got hit really hard. Obviously, Port aux Basques as well as Cape Breton. So everybody in Atlantic Canada, hopefully you're doing well. Les Îles de la Madeleine as well in Quebec, just past PEI. Hopefully everybody's doing well. But Matt, yeah, when we focus in on this one, I wrote a ton down, but when you look at Sam Patterson, the nickname's the future. Macy Barber's the first future.
We got to stop with this.
Ian Machado Gary's the second future.
It's too bad.
He's a really interesting guy because if you look at it, he trains at a Team Crossface, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. He's got that win over UFC vet Felipe Silva. Now for Felipe, he went 0-2 in the UFC. But if you like watching the Cody Garbrandt knockout over Rafael Assunção, go watch Sam Patterson knockout poor Felipe Silva. It's full extension right hook to drop him out. Like he was out like Larry the Enticer. Are you silly? He was completely knocked out. And if you look at it, like some of his other fights, we talked about this off air, his fight against Magomedov, he's getting out wrestled. He's getting pressured. He doesn't have much, to give his opponent. I'm going to put the mic down. He gets Magomedov in, and then he cranks the submission. And then once it gets down to the mat, he rolls it. He gets the finish, all that body weight. He's out of Watford. Maybe he's a big soccer fan. But the couple things I will say, Sam Patterson fights with low hands. And it's not like Julian Erosa. And it's not like, some of the fighters that we have on this weekend's Dern Jiaonan cards. So you better watch those videos. But he does walk guys down with low hands. He can get hit. The reason I know he has a good chin is because he gets hit clean in some of his fights. And for Vinicius Cenci, the thing that scares me, he's out of Brazil. He trains at King's MMA. You go to his Instagram and Gracie Baja HQ, which is where, another guy that's trained at both of those gyms and RDA's trained before. Giga Chikadze, Nasrat Hakpras, Benil Dariush, Naaman Gracie, they're all in the pictures. Where's Vinicius Cenci been? Because people will say, well, he hasn't fought in 3 years. And you go down through his records, 7-1. You look at the guys that he's beaten, you pick apart their records. It's not very good. He fought in late 2019. Then he fights in October 2021. You click on that one. Or even if you go up on his Tapology record, there's a disclaimer, which is always bad. Gabriel Fly Miranda had a disclaimer before his fight against Benoit Saint-Denis. And it says one or more bouts in this fighter's record have been flagged by Tapology's having potential issues with their legitimacy. And at the bottom, he has promotion pattern of record padding and mismatches. Click on that fight against Hugo Gonzalez, who was 0-0. And it says, while this bout remains eligible for the win-loss records, it's still been flagged by Tapology for potential issues of the legitimacy. You click on the card, Gladiator Challenge Underground 2 in Valley Center, California. And son of a gun, there's a great big thing at the top that's a disclaimer that says padding records. So I don't know what it's about, but you touched on Vinicius Cenci when he does strike. He's got really good striking. He seems to have really good jiu-jitsu. It's just not against the same level competition as what Sam Patterson's faced with Brave.
This is going to be a bit of a hot take, but they were both in Brave, so maybe we could get it because the other guy hasn't won in the UFC yet. Sam Patterson could fight Guram next. Is that too much?
No, he's not. No, yeah, that's way too much.
I just remember I was like, wait, poor Felipe Silva. We got to give Felipe Silva more of a shout out because he did go from fighting Guram to Sam Patterson back to back, and that's a terrible roll of the dice for anybody not in the UFC.
That poor fella. So, Matt, that is the co-main event. The odds in this one, you have another big favorite. Again, Sam Patterson open -300, -227. Cenci open +250, +179. So the odds are actually going down on Sam. Hype MMA saying, let's go, Sam. Brave fighters to the top. And Matt, in the main event, Bo Nickal, Donovan Beard. Donovan Beard, your CFFC champion at middleweight. He picked up the belt in his last fight. He lost all of that fight until he didn't. His opponent, Miles Lee, takes him down in the first round, takes him down in the second round, takes him down in the third round, fourth round, looking at the clock, takes him down, takes
Craig,
some
what's
time.
Bo Nickal good at? I forget.
What's that?
What's Bo Nickal good at? I forget.
The thing that made the Ultimate Warrior famous.
That wrestling.
But it was amateur wrestling, not professional wrestling. So for Donovan Beard, he gets taken down again and again and again. And then he sinks up a triangle choke out of nowhere and gets the win. So that was definitely amazing. Hasn't really fought the greatest level of competition, but neither has Bo Nickal in his young 2-0. But people know Bo Nickal. This guy is a 3-time All-American. The year that he wasn't an All-American in D1, he was a finalist. I mean, he was the 2019 Dan Hodge Trophy winner, the greatest college wrestler of the year. He was a 2-time pin champion. Great at pinning people. I mean, Mike Chioda would be cool with that. But when you do look at this, Matt, Bo Nickal, Donovan Beard, I know people are going to be all over Bo Nickal. I know the wise guys are going to steam the line, as the guy on TV says, but he had a great week last week, so shout out to Yanni the Greek. But Bo Nickal open minus 1,000. He's minus 2,076 on best fight odds. Donovan Beard open plus 600, plus 1,065. Doesn't really help you out with much of anything going with a minus 2,000 favorite. Like, it's a foregone conclusion that he wins. But I would certainly think that Bo Nickal wins this fight.
To Donovan Beard's credit, though, he's way better than Zach Borrego.
Oh, yeah.
This is going to be a bigger test for Bo Nickal. Now, even though I am saying that, this still might not be that big of a test if we're all being completely honest, because you're right. If Donovan Beard struggles with anything, it is the takedown defense. Now, if you want to reverse engineer that, though, it's, hey, Bo Nickal is somewhat basic on the feet. Yes, he does have really good power in that left hand. He is a weird, tricky southpaw for being a guy who is primarily a wrestler, but still, it is kind of basic, or at least what we've seen in practice has still been largely basic. So maybe there's a fighter out there who can defend the takedown attempts of Bo Nickal, force him to become a boxer from, sort of the middle of the cage, a place where he's going to be uncomfortable in. And maybe Donovan Beard could be that fighter for a few minutes. Problem is, and actually to Beard's credit, he does have pretty good cardio. Like you had mentioned, that triangle choke was an absolute Hail Mary in a fight where he was really getting outworked. So that always shows great cardio. It's like Anderson Silva getting his beat before he submitted Chael Sonnen. Like, it shows longevity and it shows lasting ability out of fighters like that. But unless Donovan Beard has just the perfect mix of skills to somehow take Bo Nickal into deep waters and negate a lot of that wrestling, I don't see how Bo Nickal can't just go to the well, know what he's good at, and keep on using that dominant wrestling over and over again.
Which you look at Bo Nickal in amateur fight footage, and he's going out there and he's striking with these guys and he's having a little bit of fun with it. You look at Donovan Beard, his second to last fight against Tracy Hardy earlier on in May of this year with Peak Fighting. Peak Fighting, your intro is way too long and awkward. Just make it like 2 seconds and not 20. It just And in that one, I mean, he pretty much gets dropped with a flying knee in the first 30 seconds, and then he wrestles his way into it, and Donovan gets the win. But Donovan, if let's say he gets finished in that one, well, he lost to Raheem Forrest before that, and he was losing to Miles Lee. It's just the stick-to-itiveness out of these last two fights. I really do like that out of Donovan Beard. And I see over there in the comment section, Matt, just my 2 cents has entered the chat. Banana and Grape saying easiest fight on the card. Well, you never see minus 2,000 favorites in MMA, and you have one. So the odds would suggest yes. Ice Viking saying just jumping in. The two dogs I'm eyeing are Elias and Linares. Am I off here, guys? I think Linares has a decent shot against Jack Jenkins, kind of similar to what I was feeling about Echeverria versus Filio in that first fight last week, because you had a guy that super balls to the wall against the guy that can plot and pick his shots. And in that fight, first round Filio, second round Echeverria. Echeverria starts out strong in the third, and then Filio ends up getting the finish. So I kind of feel the same way about that one. I think Linares has a decent shot. Just my 2 cents saying interested to see how much Bo has developed from his last fight.
And that's really the question. That's kind of what I'm looking to get answered too. Like, not a lot of people think Donovan Beard's going to win this fight. Sucks to say, it's just the truth. So really it becomes how much better has Bo Nickal been able to get? And if Bo Nickal's going to look different, what if he decides I'm not going to use my wrestling for the first 5 minutes? I know that might sound wild, but like at a certain point, you're going to have to progress in a meaningful way that's going to make you better over time. And if you keep on just going to your wrestling over and over and over again against fighters who have no business being in there wrestling with you, you're not really going to get better at the other versions or the other skills of MMA. And then eventually you're just going to be that pure wrestler who has to fight Robert Whittaker now, the guy who doesn't get taken down. He's an amazing striker. So fighters almost do themselves a disservice by just doing the thing that they're really, really good at. So for Bo Nickal, maybe this is good that they're building him up the slow way. They're giving him these guys who he is a massive favorite over, because maybe this is how Bo Nickal can develop to the most of his potential.
Well, folks, we've reached the conclusion of Dana White's Contender Series 2022. I mean, it's been a great year with the picks. It's been a lot of fun. You guys wanted the show. We wanted to have some fun with it, Matt. We have 1 week left. We want to end up in the plus. The pick here, I'm going with Sam Patterson. I've been talking about this guy for a really long time. I've been really impressed by his skill set. And if you look at it in 2022, lightweight's still on fire. You look at the guys that he's beaten. I mean, Kunkar, Pasha, Azmaev, where he finished them in the second round. The Kamil Magomedov submission win was amazing and a come from behind. The Juron fight was great with Brave CF 51 last year. And the Felipe Silva knockout that he had a couple of years ago in 2020. This is a guy that's been fighting high-level competition and winning impressively. Sure, there's things that you might not like, whether he's 6'4" or 6'3". He does the Luke Rockhold lean back. He does the lean back, and he has low hands, but he has power in his hands. He has a good chin. He has good jiu-jitsu, and he can really bring everything together in MMA. So for me, I like him over a very unproven Cenci, who has a bit of a questionable record. So I got to go with Sam Patterson in this one.
Sam Patterson might be fighting Askar Masharov this Tuesday. Remember Askar had that great
It's not
record?
like that.
And
It's
then
not
we
like
got
that.
closer to fight night, and that record wasn't as good anymore, and that guy didn't look like he was logged. Now, I'm just saying, it is not a good sign how there's a lot of MMA fighters out there who can get to this level with us still having so many question marks about
It's just one fight on the record.
But
that
still,
happened in the States.
Fighters at the UFC level have had these issues as of late, and it's just mind-boggling to me. Like, if you want to become a professional basketball player, you play in college, everybody watches your games, and then you get drafted, everybody knows, and it's just, there's a very clear path to how you developed. And MMA, there's so many organizations out there that it is really hard to tell and have like an actual good breadcrumb trail back to where these guys originated. But still, I like Sam Patterson a lot in Tuesday's fight. I really do think he is the most developed fighter on this card. And again, this is someone who looked good early in his career, has fought a very high level of competition up until this point, and I could see him having success in the UFC. You're right. The fact that we know he has a good chin is a little bit worrying because some of those fighters on the way up have been able to crack him, but I still like the foundation of his game, and I definitely think it's something that he can build upon in the future. He's still a young guy. He does have sort of an unnatural body for the weight class, or something that does make him unique. So I think this should be a fun fight for as long as it lasts, but I'm in 100% agreement with you. I like Sam Patterson tomorrow.
We will see if he's the second coming of Jalen Turner, or will he be the second coming of a late career James Vick as one of those bigger guys at lightweight. Matt, it's a big time card that we have coming up tomorrow. What else do we have drop earlier on this week?
We have a fun card going on this weekend. Yan Xiaonan versus Mackenzie Dern.
No media, no fans, no outside people.
No fans. Don't know how great tickets were probably selling for that event anyways, for being honest, but still, it is a really fun event. I know it was one of those ones where, okay, it's the day that we're going to make the prediction videos. You're a little bit down on the card, but once you start talking about it and actually looking into some of the matchups, it is a pretty fun fight card. I know we're both really excited about some of the odder matchups that are further down on the card. The first one that comes to mind for me, of course, is Brendan Allen versus Christoph Schott.
And I will say, to cut you off, Matt, just before you go too far, it looks like they jumbled the lineup again. And Brendan Allen, Christoph Jotko, from the last thing that I saw, I think they're like the third to last fight, the fight before the co-main event.
As they should be.
Yeah, they really did have a bit of a rework to that card, but it is a really big card. We have question mark kicks 2 hours before the prelims on Saturday, and it's one of those weeks where now Contender Series. Now this is the last week of Contender Series, and we don't have a fight night card for 2 weeks after that. It's October 15th, the next card. So be sure to shout it out. Be sure to let us know what you'd like to see for content moving forward with the channel. You folks are the hardcores of the hardcores. I'm away, but we're still doing the damn thing, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. So thanks so much to everybody that tuned in. Those likes, baking that algorithm, really do help out the show. If you can, we're going to have a lot of fun moving further into the week, especially with question mark kicks. So make sure you check it out. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.